The girls' weekend was over, but my wife's real nightmare began the moment she saw the for sale sign in our yard and realized the secrets were finally out. Can you imagine walking through your front door only to find your entire life, your home, your future, your marriage, literally for sale? That's exactly what happened to my wife, Vanessa. But what she didn't know, what no one knew until that moment, was that I was the one who put that sign there, and it was all legally binding. Her face went absolutely white when I told her. You see, this isn't just about a house. This is about trust, betrayal, and the kind of truth that shatters everything. Before you judge what I did, what we did with that for sale sign, let me tell you who I am. My name is Caleb Hargrove. I'm 44, born and raised right here in Ohio. I work for the Department of Transportation. Nothing glamorous. Think reflective vests, steel-toed boots, endless coffee from a beat-up thermos. Some days I'm stuck in an office, but most days I'm out on the highway at sunrise, watching tail lights disappear into the distance, wondering how many of those people are driving home to someone who actually loves them. My schedule is a mess. Night shifts, early mornings, overtime whenever the state decides a lane needs fixing yesterday. I'm just a guy who shows up, does the work, and doesn't complain much. 5 years before that sign went up, I felt like I'd finally made it. A little 3-bedroom in a quiet suburb north of Columbus. A patch of grass I could mow on Saturdays. A grill out back. 2 cars in the driveway. Neighbors who waved and borrowed tools. And inside that house, my wife, Vanessa. She was 46, worked at a furniture store, and had a daughter, Kayla, from a previous marriage. On paper it looked solid. 8 years of marriage. I genuinely thought we were solid. But a marriage isn't just a job and a mortgage, is it? It's the people living inside those walls. Vanessa came with history. Kayla, her daughter, was a teenager when I met her, half eye roll, half curiosity. By the time all this blew up, Kayla was 22, living near campus, figuring out her own life. Our dinners were mostly normal. Frozen pizza some nights, roast chicken others. Kayla would drop by, dump her laundry, tell stories about professors and boys who weren't worth her time. Sure, there was tension sometimes. I wasn't her dad, and I never tried to be. I just tried to be steady. A ride when her car broke down. Someone to look over a lease. The good stepdad. That was enough for me. Vanessa, though. She was the bright one in the room. Pretty. Put together. She could talk anyone into a new sofa and a matching coffee table. Her customers loved her. My buddies said I'd married up. I believed them. I truly thought we were a team, a second chance for her, a first real family for me. I trusted her with my life, and with the life we'd built. It didn't start with some big dramatic explosion. It started with girls' night. One Thursday, Vanessa came home a little more dressed up than usual. Nice top, tighter jeans, a bit more perfume than normal. The girls from the store want to go downtown after our shift, she said. Just a couple drinks, blow off some steam. You okay if I go? I didn't even hesitate. Yeah, I told her, you deserve to have fun. That's what you're supposed to say, right? You don't want to be that controlling husband who freaks out every time his wife leaves the house. I've seen those guys. Nobody respects them. So, I stayed home, heated up leftovers, watched a game I barely remember. She came back late, cheeks flushed, laughing about some drunk guy who tried to hit on the whole group. She tossed her heels by the door, kissed me on the forehead and said, "You'd have hated it." Too loud. There was a little voice in the back of my head that noticed the extra makeup, the late hour, the way she smelled like a bar, and a cheap cologne that wasn't mine. But I pushed it down. I wasn't going to be that jealous husband. After a few girls' nights, it leveled up. One evening we were cleaning up after dinner, just the two of us. She was rinsing plates, I was drying. Real quiet. Real normal. Then she said, kind of casual, "The girls are talking about doing a weekend in Hocking Hills. Just us. Cabin, hiking, wine, hot tub. I think it'd be good for me." I pictured it easily. Trees, cabins, those stupid Instagram photos with matching flannel. It sounded harmless. She watched my face while she dried her hands. "You okay if I go?" "Just Friday to Sunday. I'll be back before your Monday shift." "Yeah," I said. "Go. Have fun." A few days later, I helped load her suitcase into the back of her friend's SUV. She looked good. Too good for hiking if I'm being honest. Fresh hair, new leggings, that kind of outfit you buy for being seen. Right before she got in, she put a hand on my chest, looked me in the eye and said, "You know I love you, right?" I didn't even flinch. "Yeah," I told her. "I know." I watched the car turn the corner and disappear. Back then, I still believed every word. That first night she was gone, I worked an early shift. Came home to a quiet house. No TV, no hairdryer, no Vanessa singing off-key in the shower. Just the hum of the fridge and my own footsteps. Around 9 p.m. I grabbed my phone. Not because I didn't trust her, just habit. I wanted to see her face, tell her good night. I hit FaceTime. She answered on the second ring. Music blasted in the background, glasses clinking, people laughing. The screen was dark for a second, then her face popped up, lit by bar lights. "Hey babe," she shouted over the noise. "We're at dinner?" I smiled. "Yeah. Where?" She glanced off to the side just for a second. "I don't remember the name," she said. "My friend picked it. Some little place near the cabin." Vanessa has a memory like a steel trap. She can remember a throw pillow a customer looked at 6 months ago, but she couldn't remember the name of the restaurant she was in? I laughed it off, said goodnight, told her to have fun. But when the call ended and the house went quiet again, something in my stomach twisted. For the first time, something felt off. She came back Sunday afternoon, right on schedule. I heard her keys in the lock, the scrape of her suitcase. Then her voice, bright and relaxed, like she'd just stepped out of a commercial. "There's my handsome husband," she said, wrapping her arms around me, kissing my cheek. "The trip was great." I hugged her back. She smelled like hotel soap and perfume. "So," I asked, keeping it light, "what was your favorite part?" She pulled back, thought for half a second too long. Just shopping, wine, girl talk. We had fun." She tossed it out like a weather report. No story about getting lost on a trail. No joke about someone tripping over a cooler. No rant about bad service or a creepy waiter. Just shopping, wine. We had fun. This is a woman who once told me a 20-minute story about a couple arguing over a dresser. She loves details. She lives in details. Now, a whole weekend with her closest friends could be summed up in 8 flat words. I nodded, acted normal, carried her bag to the bedroom. But in my head, it felt like she was reading from a script she'd barely rehearsed. I wish I could say that first trip was the only one. It wasn't. Over the next few weeks, Vanessa lined up 2 more girls' weekends. Same pitch every time. The girls want to do another cabin. The girls found a cute little town. Always the girls, never names, never details. I started noticing patterns. There were windows of time where she just disappeared. No texts. No calls picked up. Then an hour or 2 later I'd get a quick message. "Sorry, was in the shower." "Sorry, bad signal." "Sorry, we were in the hot tub." Bad signal? At a cabin with Wi-Fi and 3 women who live on their phones? One night, I asked a couple more questions than usual. "Where exactly is this place? How many are going?" She sighed. Rolled her eyes a little. "Why are you interrogating me, Caleb? Since when do you care so much where I am?" That one stung. Because the truth was, I cared the whole time. I just trusted her. I went to bed staring at the ceiling, arguing with myself. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, controlling husband. But I'm not stupid either. When your gut won't shut up, you start looking for something to either prove it wrong or prove it right. One night, I was sitting on the couch, TV on mute, phone in my hand. Vanessa was away with the girls again. I opened Facebook, pulled up one of her coworkers she always mentioned, then another. Scrolled through their photos. There they were, on a real girls' trip from months before. Group selfies, matching drinks, tags, inside jokes. And Vanessa in the middle of every shot, smiling. I kept scrolling. To the dates she claimed she was out with them lately. They were posting too, but they were at home. At their kids' games. At brunch with their husbands. Half the time they were checking in at places in Columbus, while Vanessa was supposedly out of town with them. I opened my text thread with her. Looked at the timestamps. Going to dinner with the girls, sent at the exact same time one of them had posted a picture from her own living room. That's when it stopped being a feeling and turned into fact. Social media doesn't lie. People do. I need to be honest about something. I didn't want to snoop through her phone. That's not who I am. I wasn't raised that way. Where I'm from, men are taught to be steady, be strong. Don't be needy. Don't be paranoid. You work hard, you pay the bills, you trust your wife. That's the deal. So, I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. That every weird answer, every vague story, every bad signal, was just me being insecure. But something changed. Every time Vanessa said, "I love you," I started hearing everything she wasn't saying. There were holes in her words. Little pauses. Little deflections. "I love you" started to sound less like a promise and more like a distraction. One night, I was brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed. I looked up and really looked at myself in the mirror. Gray starting at the temples. Lines around the eyes. A man who'd done his best. And this thought hit me hard. At the end of the day, I still got to look in the mirror. Something was going on, I needed to know. Not to control her. To respect myself. I'm not a doormat. So, one night after she'd gone to bed early, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my laptop. The house was quiet. Just me, the glow of the screen, and a knot in my chest. I opened Google and typed the sentence no husband ever wants to type. How to catch a cheating spouse. Enter. Page after page of articles, checklists, red flags I already knew too well. Forum posts from men who sounded just like me. Guys who ignored their gut until it was too late. Guys who stayed. Guys who left. One word kept popping up in all of it. Private investigator. I'd always thought PIs were for movies and rich people, not middle-class guys from Ohio who fix highways for a living. But the more I read, the more it made sense. If I tried to follow her, I'd tip her off. If I guessed, I'd always wonder if I was wrong. So, I started calling around. Most places sounded like salesmen. Then I reached a man named Mark Ellison. His voice was low, calm. No drama. He listened. Asked a few sharp questions. Then he said, if she's cheating, we'll know. If she's not, you get your peace of mind. And right there, I knew the train to the truth had just left the station. A few days after that call, I drove across town to meet Mark in person. His office was on the second floor of an old red brick building, the kind with an iron staircase outside that rattles under your boots. No big sign, just a small plaque with his name. Quiet. Forgettable. The kind of place you only find if you're looking for it. Inside it was simple. Desk. 2 chairs. Filing cabinets. A coffee maker that had seen better days. Mark wasn't a big talker. He shook my hand, sat down, and got straight to it. What's her schedule like? How often are these girls' trips? Any regular late nights? I slid a folder across his desk. Pictures of Vanessa, her car's license plate, the address of her job, her typical shifts. He nodded. Took notes. I'll follow her when she leaves work. When she leaves home for these trips. Photos, video, timestamps. Nothing dramatic. Just facts. Facts. That word hit harder than I expected. Then came the money talk. Retainer. Hourly rate. How long these things usually take. I signed the contract and handed over my card. I worked too hard for that money, but I had to protect my future. Not long after, Mark texted me. We'll start next Thursday. She's got a late shift, right? I stared at the message for a long second before replying, yeah. That week crawled. I went to work, but I wasn't really there. I checked traffic reports, answered emails, sat in meetings, and kept my phone face up on the desk like a teenager waiting for a crush to text back. Thursday night, around the time Vanessa usually closed the store, my phone buzzed. Mark. Following. She just left work. My heart jumped into my throat. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen waiting. An hour later, she went straight home. Next time he followed her, she stopped at a grocery store, then came back. Like nothing was wrong. For a moment, I started to feel crazy. Maybe I'd read too much. Maybe it really was all in my head. Maybe I was about to pay a stranger thousands of dollars to prove my own wife was innocent. Part of me wanted that, to be wrong, to feel stupid, to apologize and move on. But there was another part of me, deep down, that knew. The storm hadn't hit yet. The message that changed everything didn't look special. It was a Tuesday. I was on my couch, half watching some game I didn't care about. Phone in my hand like always. Then Mark's text came in. She's not going home. My whole body went cold. I typed back, where is she going? The dots blinked for a second. Then, she just pulled into a hotel off the interstate. I stared at those words until they blurred. A second later, another message. A photo. Vanessa's car. Her exact make, her exact color, her exact plate. Parked under a bright hotel sign I'd driven past 100 times on my way to work. The kind of place people stayed for business trips, or for things they didn't want anyone to see. I zoomed in on the plate like an idiot, as if there was any chance it wasn't hers. It was hers. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream. I just sat there, breathing like I'd been punched in the gut, because that's what it felt like. Like someone had reached inside my chest and hit me hard, right where all the trust used to live. A few days later, Mark called and asked me to come in. Same old red brick building, same rattling stairs. But this time it felt like walking into a courtroom where I was both witness and victim. He didn't waste time. He set a thick manila folder on the desk between us. Everything's in there, he said. Timeline, photos, video stills. My hands didn't feel like my own when I opened it. The first few shots were simple. Vanessa's car, the hotel sign, timestamps in the corner. Then I turned the page and there she was. My wife. Pressed up against some guy in a parking lot, kissing him like he was the only man she'd ever loved. Different nights, different clothes, same two people, their bodies close, his hand on her lower back, her smiling up at him in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. More photos. Them walking into restaurants together. Into that hotel lobby. Into elevators. I used to think if I ever saw something like that, I'd lose it. Smash something. Break down. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Something inside me just shut off. Whatever I felt for her didn't die loud. It went silent. Mark watched me flip through those photos until I couldn't look anymore. He leaned back in his chair and asked quietly, "What are you going to do, Caleb?" I sat there for a moment, staring at the edge of his desk. "I'm done," I said. "I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to couples therapy." She made her choice. He nodded once. No pep talk. No think it through. Just acceptance. Maybe he'd heard it 100 times before. That night, I drove home to the same house where all those lies had lived. Vanessa was on the couch, TV on, hair up in a messy bun like any other Tuesday. She smiled when she saw me. "How was your day?" she asked. "Just another day at work," I said, kissing her on the top of the head. I sat down beside her like nothing in the world had changed. We went to bed. She curled up against me like I was still her safe place. I stared into the dark and repeated one thing in my head over and over. "I'm not your plan B. I'm not going to be the fool in your story." I wasn't planning a fight. I was planning my exit. The next move wasn't to yell. It was to call a lawyer. I made an appointment with Allison Carter. "Call me Ally," she said on the phone. "Divorce attorney, Columbus." Her office was the opposite of Mark's. Bright, clean, diplomas on the wall. Shelves full of neatly labeled files. The kind of place marriages go to die on paper. I sat across from her and slid the same folder onto yet another desk. She put on glasses, opened it, and went through everything slowly. No gasps. No sympathy noises. Just page after page, her pen tapping quietly as she read. When she was done, she closed it and looked at me. "In this state," she said, "infidelity doesn't blow up the asset split, but it can kill alimony." I let that sink in. She went on, "With this evidence, she doesn't get to blow up your life and still get paid for it." That line hit something deep in me because that was exactly what this felt like. Like she'd lit a match in the middle of everything I'd built, then expected me to bankroll the ashes. For the first time since seeing those photos, it didn't feel like I was just losing. It felt like I had a way to fight back. After we went through the evidence, Ally shifted gears. "First things first," she said. "No big transfers, no selling assets. Don't touch the retirement accounts. Not until we file. You don't want the court thinking you're hiding anything." I nodded. I hadn't even thought that far ahead. I was still stuck on hotel photos. "Second," she said, sliding a legal pad toward me, "document everything quietly. Every bill you pay. Every car payment. Every expense that keeps this ship floating." So I did. I went home and became my own accountant. Every time I paid the mortgage, I wrote it down. Every time I made a payment on the car Vanessa drove, I wrote it down. Groceries, utilities, all of it. Not to be petty. To have proof of exactly what I'd carried. We talked about serving her the divorce papers too. A process server instead of a messy confrontation. Clean. Legal. No yelling in the kitchen. Finally, Ally slid a stack of documents across the desk. "This starts it," she said. "Once you sign, we move." My hand shook a little as I picked up the pen. That signature wasn't just me ending a marriage. That signature was me choosing myself. A week or so later, Ally called. "Papers are filed," she said. "We're in the system now. We wait for dates." Just like that, 8 years of my life reduced to a case number in a courthouse computer. I hung up and pictured Vanessa at the furniture store, smiling at customers, helping some couple pick out a sectional for their forever home, having no idea her own was already on legal life support. That afternoon, I had a job site not far from downtown. On the way back, I took a detour. I drove past the family courthouse. Brick building, tall windows, flags out front. People going in and out, holding folders that probably looked a lot like mine. I pulled over for a minute and just sat there, staring at it. "This," I said under my breath, "is where our marriage will officially die." The words tasted strange, heavy but honest. Then another thought followed right behind it. Quieter but stronger, "This is where I get my life back." Same building, same door. Death certificate for one life. Birth certificate for another. I put the truck in drive and pulled away, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness, but a direction. Once the papers were filed, Ally said the words I'd been waiting for. "Okay, now you can start separating your finances carefully, quietly." So I did. On my next day off, I drove to a branch of my bank across town. Not the one Vanessa and I usually used. Different tellers. Different faces. I sat in that little office with the fake plant in the corner while a young guy in a tie clicked around on his screen. "How can we help you today, Mr. Hargrove?" "I want to open a new checking account," I said. "In just my name. No joint access. No extra card. Just mine." We set it up. New account number. New debit card on the way. Then I called HR at work, told them I needed my direct deposit changed. "Everything okay?" the woman on the phone asked. "Yeah," I lied. "Just some personal changes." A few keystrokes later, my paycheck was no longer heading into the same pool she swam in. Walking out of that bank, nothing outside had changed. Same cars. Same sky. Same traffic. But inside something clicked. That was the day I stopped funding my own betrayal. Protecting my paycheck was step 1. Step 2 was making sure she couldn't keep using my name like an open wallet. One evening, after she'd gone to bed early with another migraine, I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of bills and my phone. First up, credit cards. I called each company one by one, verified my info, gave the last 4 of my social, answered security questions I'd forgotten I'd ever set. Then the same sentence over and over. "I need to remove an authorized user from my account." Click. Type. Done. No more dinners on my card. No more shopping sprees on days she was too tired to cook. No more hotel rooms with another man paid for by my overtime. Next, the life insurance through my job. "Who's your current beneficiary?" the HR rep asked. "My wife," I said. The word felt wrong in my mouth. "I need that changed to my sister." We did the same with my private policy. Same call. Same change. When I hung up the last call, I sat there in the quiet kitchen and said it out loud, just for me. "You don't get to wreck my life and live off my paycheck." I wasn't cutting off my kindness. I was cutting off her access. There was one thing I couldn't cleanly cut away from her: the car. The SUV Vanessa drove every day had both our names on the title, but for 3 years I was the one making every single payment. One afternoon on my break, I called the finance company. Gave them the account number, answered their questions, then asked, "Can we transfer this loan into just her name?" The woman on the line was polite but firm. "Not without her signature," she said. "And if the payments stop, it'll hit both your credit reports, yours and hers." So, my options were, keep paying for the car she used to go see another man, or torch my own credit out of spite. I hung up, feeling that special kind of anger you get when you realize you're trapped by paperwork. I told Ally about it. She didn't flinch. "Keep making the minimum payments for now," she said. "But write down every single one, dates, amounts. We'll make sure the judge knows you carried that car." So that's what I did. Every month I paid for the vehicle she drove to cheat on me. And every month, I wrote down another line in the bill she didn't know she'd be paying later. The debt, financial and emotional, was stacking up fast. Not long after that, she brought up the trip that would change everything. We were in the kitchen after dinner, plates in the sink, dishwasher humming. Vanessa dried her hands and said, kind of soft, "Hey, my friend a few hours away has been going through some stuff. The girls are thinking about driving up, staying with her a few days, maybe 5, just to be there for her." She put on that gentle, good wife voice. "We just need some girl time. Clear our heads. You okay with that?" By then, my heart was mostly empty, but my face still knew the routine. "Sounds fun," I said. "You deserve it." She stepped forward and hugged me. Not the quick, distracted hug I'd gotten used to. Longer. Tighter. Like she was hugging her own conscience. Quiet. She pressed her cheek against my chest and said, "You're a good man, Caleb. You know that." I wrapped my arms around her, staring over her shoulder at the fridge, at the calendar where those 5 days would sit like a loaded gun. "Yeah," I said, but in my head, not out loud. Funny, she was about to find out just how good. She hugged me tighter than she had in months, like she was trying to convince herself she wasn't lying again. "You're a good man, Caleb." She had no idea she was hugging the man who was about to end the life she'd been living on autopilot. Because those 5 days she was leaving for would become the last 5 days she ever lied to my face. The morning she left for that 5-day trip, I played my role one last time. I carried her suitcase down the steps, loaded it into the trunk. She checked her makeup in the car window, fixed a strand of hair, smiled at me like nothing in the world was wrong. "Text me when you get there," I said. "I will," she promised, leaning in to kiss me. To anyone watching, we looked like a normal married couple. Husband seeing his wife off to visit friends. She backed out of the driveway, waved, and turned onto our street. I watched her tail lights until they disappeared over the hill. The second she was gone, I pulled my phone out of my pocket and called Ally. She picked up on the second ring. "Caleb," I said, my voice steady. "I don't want to stay in this place. It's contaminated." She didn't argue. "Then we get rid of it. The house is in both your names. We'll need a court order to force a sale. I'll file a motion today." While Vanessa was driving off to whatever lie she'd prepared this time, my lawyer was drafting the paperwork to sell the very house she thought she was coming home to. She left for her little getaway. I started dismantling the life she thought was waiting for her. She left for her little getaway. I started dismantling the life she believed she still controlled. And when she came back, she wasn't returning to a marriage. She was returning to a verdict. A few days into her trip, my phone rang. It was Ally. "The judge signed off," she said. "We have an order to sell the marital home." I asked her to email me a copy. 10 minutes later, I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a PDF on my laptop. It was just a few pages of legal language. Case number. Our names. Some boxes checked. At the bottom, in dark ink, was Judge Ramirez's signature. That's all it took to turn our house into an asset to be liquidated. Holding the printed pages in my hand, it felt like a death certificate. This was the official notice that our marriage wasn't just broken emotionally. It was now being dismantled legally, brick by brick, line by line. But there was something else in it too. Because buried in that same document was freedom. No more walking on floors that had heard her lies. No more sleeping in a bedroom she'd left empty in more ways than one. Ally told me she'd have the process server deliver two things at once: the divorce papers and the notice that the house was being sold. So, while Vanessa thought she still had a home to come back to, the court had already agreed on something different. This house wouldn't be her safety net. It would be the stage for her wake-up call. With the court order in hand, the next step was practical. Find someone to sell the house. I called a local agent, Kelly Brooks. She showed up 2 days later in a neat blazer, tablet in hand. Smile, professional but not fake. We walked through the place together. She measured rooms, took notes, snapped photos of the kitchen, the yard, the living room where I'd once imagined grandkids playing. "Great neighborhood," she said. "Good market right now. You shouldn't have any trouble getting interest." At the end of the walkthrough, we sat at the dining table where Vanessa and I had blown out birthday candles and signed Christmas cards. Kelly glanced at her tablet, then at me. "So why are you selling?" she asked, gentle but direct. It was clearly a question she asked 10 times a week. I could have dodged it, said downsizing or job change. Instead, I just said one word: divorce. She didn't flinch. Just gave a small nod like she'd heard that answer 100 times, and tapped something into her screen. No judgment. No pity. Just business. We agreed on a listing price, signed the paperwork, and set a date for the sign to go up. Saying divorce out loud like that hurt, but it also made one thing clear: there was no going back. The morning they came to put the sign up was bright and calm, the kind of nice Ohio morning you'd normally waste on mowing the lawn or washing the car. Instead, I watched a white SUV pull up with Kelly's logo on the side. A guy got out with a post, a metal frame, and a big red and white for sale sign. I stood just inside the front window, out of sight, as he carried everything to the middle of the front yard. He lined it up, drove the stakes into the ground, and set the sign in place. Every hit of his boot on that post felt like a nail going into the coffin of the life I thought I had. When he left, I walked out and looked at it up close. The sign was simple. Agent photo, phone number. For sale. Nothing emotional. Nothing dramatic. But to me, it was louder than any argument we'd never had. After that, I went back inside and started packing the parts of my life I wanted to keep. Important papers. Some clothes. A couple of photos that still meant something. I moved boxes into a storage unit, left just enough so the house still looked lived in. Standing at the window again, staring at that sign, one thought hit me hard and clear. That sign was the first honest thing in front of this house in a long time. By the time she drove back from that girls' trip, everything was already in motion. The divorce papers were filed. The order to sell the house was signed. The for sale sign was planted in our front yard like a flag on a battlefield she didn't even know she was standing on. I spent that Sunday afternoon sitting in the living room with a book in my hands. I couldn't tell you a single word that was on the page. I wasn't reading. I was waiting. On the kitchen counter sat Mark's folder. Every photo. Every timestamp. All the proof of who she'd really been while I was out there working overtime to pay for this life. The house was quiet. No TV. No music. Just the tick of the clock and the faint sound of a lawnmower down the street. Then I heard it. The familiar sound of her car turning into the driveway. Gravel under tires. Engine cutting off. Trunk opening. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just felt calm. Cold. Steady. Calm. The front door opened. I heard the sharp slam. The pause. I closed the book gently and waited for her to explode. She didn't disappoint. "Caleb, what the hell is that sign doing in our yard?" she yelled from the hallway, voice already up a few notches. I stayed seated for a beat, then looked up as she walked into the living room, eyes wide, face flushed. "You can't just sell the house," she snapped. "Have you lost your mind?" "We're selling the house," I said, my voice low, steady. She threw her hands up. "We? You mean you? You don't get to make that kind of decision without me." I held her stare for a second, then added, "I didn't do it alone. The court ordered the sale as part of our divorce." She blinked. Laughed once, sharp and fake. "Or what? This is some kind of joke, right?" "No joke," I said. "Papers are already filed. You'll be served this week." The room went dead quiet. No TV noise. No car outside. Just her breathing. Short. Shallow. Like she'd been punched. For months she'd controlled the lies, the stories, the excuses. Right then all of that flipped. I wasn't asking for an explanation. I wasn't begging her to stay. I was informing her that this was over. She stood there, breathing hard, eyes still wild from the word divorce. I didn't argue with her. I didn't explain. I just walked into the kitchen, picked up the folder Mark had given me, came back and held it out. "Open it," I said. She looked at it like it might explode. "What is this?" "Just open it, Vanessa." Her fingers shook as she flipped it open. The first photo slowed her down. The second one wiped the color from her face. By the third, her mouth had fallen open. Her eyes moved faster. Page after page. Her in that hotel parking lot. Her in his arms. Her walking into rooms she told me didn't exist. "This," she stammered, voice cracking. "This isn't what it looks like." I actually laughed. A short, dead sound. "That's the best you've got?" I asked. "That's not a mistake, Vanessa. That's a choice." Whatever performance she thought she was going to give fell apart right there. She started sobbing hard, loud, covering her face with her hands, like if she couldn't see the pictures they'd stop being real. She reached for my arm like contact could fix it. I stepped back. Her tears didn't move me. The photos already had. She kept crying, reaching, begging. "Caleb, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling." I was confused. I cut her off with a hand. "No," I said. "You made your choice. Now you live with it." I sat down, looked her straight in the eye and laid it out. "I've already removed you from all my credit cards," I said. "You're not an authorized user on anything anymore." Her crying hitched. "I've changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance, the one through work and the private policy. They're in my sister's name now, not yours." Her hands dropped from her face. She stared at me like she hadn't really understood what was happening until that second. "And that car you've been driving," I added. "The one in both our names that I've been paying on for 3 years, every single payment is documented. Ally will be asking the judge to make you pay me back for your half." The tears shut off like someone flipped a switch. "What did you just say?" she snapped, voice different now. No more broken victim, just fear and anger. "You heard me," I said. "You don't get to wreck my life and still live off my paycheck." That was the moment I saw it clear. She wasn't heartbroken I was leaving. She was terrified I was taking the benefits with me. You'd think getting caught like that would slow her down. It didn't. Within a week I started hearing things. Little comments. Changes in tone. A friend of hers who used to be friendly suddenly went cold at the grocery store. A neighbor made a weird remark about how hard marriage can be when one person checks out. It didn't take long to piece it together. Vanessa was out there telling people I was emotionally abusive, that I'd neglected her, that I worked all the time, never paid attention, never listened. That she fell into somebody else's arms because I'd pushed her there. Some people ate it up. They saw her tears, heard her version, and decided I must have been the problem. Even a couple of my own buddies pulled me aside. "Man," one of them asked, "is there more to the story you're not saying?" Yeah, there was more to the story. Just not the kind she was selling. I went home that night and sat at my table, staring at the same walls she'd lied through. And it hit me. She wasn't just cheating on me with another man. She was cheating on me with another story. She wanted to make me the bad guy in a story where I was the victim. So I stopped letting her be the only one talking. I called Mark and asked for everything he had in digital form. Photos. Video stills. The timeline with dates, times, and locations. Every ugly piece of it. Then I sat down at my laptop and built a document. No name calling. No rants. No, let me tell you how I feel. Just facts. Page 1, the dates she told me she was on girls' trips. Next to them, the dates and times Mark had her at hotels and restaurants with the same guy. Attached photos. Her kissing him. Her walking into rooms with him. Her car parked overnight. When it was done, I attached the file to an email. I sent it to my family. To her family. To our mutual friends. To a couple of coworkers who'd already heard her sob story. Then I posted a redacted version on social media. His face blurred, license plates covered. Caption, here's the truth. No more, no less. I sat back, heart pounding but weirdly calm. I wasn't doing it to be petty. I was doing it because I wasn't going to be the fool in someone else's story. If she wanted to perform, fine. I just handed the audience the script she didn't want them to read. The reaction didn't hit all at once. It came in waves. First wave, silence. The same friends of hers who'd been loudly posting about how hard divorce is when one person is toxic went quiet. No more vague status updates. No more sad quotes about healing from emotional abuse. Comments that used to say, "You deserve better, girl," just stopped. Second wave. My phone started ringing. A buddy of mine who'd asked if there was more to the story called and said, "Man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have doubted you." My sister said, "I knew something was off with her. I just didn't have proof." Then her family started reaching out. Her own brother texted me, "We're sorry, Caleb. We didn't know. You didn't deserve that." People I barely knew sent messages, "You did the right thing, man." Most guys would have stayed quiet. Vanessa, on the other hand, completely lost it. She called, screaming that I'd humiliated her, that I'd twisted things, that she'd sue me for defamation. I told Ally about the threat. She actually laughed. Let her try. Truth is an absolute defense. That line stuck with me. She could spin feelings all she wanted. But facts were on my side. Once the listing went live, the house moved fast. Couples came through with their realtors, walking the same halls we used to decorate for Christmas. I stayed out of the way most of the time, but I watched a few showings from my truck or the sidewalk. Eventually, a young couple made an offer. Late 20s. Expecting their first baby. They walked the yard talking about where the kid would ride a bike one day. Inside, they pointed at the smallest bedroom and called it the nursery, like it was already decided. Watching them, I felt this weird mix of grief and relief. That house had been the scene of the worst betrayal of my life. But to them, it was just a fresh start with a decent school district. We accepted their offer. After the mortgage and costs were paid off, there was a decent chunk of equity left. By the agreement, half of it went to Vanessa. She'd put up half the down payment when we bought the place. On paper, she was entitled to it. People asked if that bothered me. Of course it did. But I signed the papers and let the money go. It was only fair, I told myself. Even if nothing else about this felt fair. I didn't want revenge so bad that I'd have to compromise who I was to get it. Divorces aren't like in the movies. No screaming. No banging on tables. Just cold air, hard benches, and people waiting to have their lives divided by a stranger in a black robe. Our final hearing was in front of Judge Ramirez. I sat on one side with Ally. Vanessa sat on the other with her attorney, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, but still trying to hold herself like the victim. Ally went first. She laid everything out. The timeline. The trips. The photos. The money trail. The car payments. The way I'd kept everything running while she was busy starting a side life. Then her lawyer stood up and talked about a long marriage, the lifestyle my client is accustomed to, and how Vanessa deserved alimony because I made more and she'd struggle without support. Judge Ramirez flipped through the file, expression flat. Then she looked up. "Request for alimony is denied," she said. "Given the evidence of infidelity and the financial records, I don't find spousal support appropriate in this case." Just like that. No alimony. Then she turned to the car. "Mrs. Miller will reimburse Mr. Hargrove for half of the car payments he has made during the last 3 years. A few $1,000s. It didn't fix what she broke. But it was the first time in a long time that something finally felt fair. After the dust settled, my life got smaller but in all the right ways. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment not far from my job and close to my parents. Nothing special. Beige walls. Thin carpet. Old appliances. But it was mine. No ghosts in the corners. No lies soaked into the drywall. I started going to the gym again. At first, it was just something to do besides sit alone with my thoughts. Then the weights got heavier. My back stopped aching so much. My clothes fit better. I started to recognize the guy in the mirror again. I picked up the things I'd let slide. Early morning fishing trips on weekends. Long drives with no destination, just music and open road. Watching basketball without checking my phone to see if my wife was okay. Sometimes I'd grab a beer with Mike after a shift. He asked about Vanessa once or twice. I gave short answers. Eventually he stopped asking. We talked about work, sports, life. Normal stuff. Felt good. People ask if I miss being married. The honest answer? I miss the idea of being married. The picture in my head of partnership, trust, home. But I don't miss the reality I had. And once I realized that, I stopped looking backward. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I came home from work and checked my mailbox, like any other day. Bills. Junk. A plain envelope with no return address. I almost tossed it, but then I saw the handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. Vanessa's. I sat in my truck, engine still running, and opened it. Inside was a thick, folded stack of pages. Her writing front and back. She apologized over and over. She wrote about how she'd lost herself, how she'd made a terrible mistake, how she still loved me, how she'd never find another man like me. She said she wanted to meet one last time, to talk like adults, to get closure properly. I read every single word. Not because I was tempted to go back, but because a part of me needed to see exactly what she'd say when there were no more lies left to protect. When I was done, I sat there for a minute looking at the stack of paper that once would have shattered me. Then I tore it up. Small pieces. Smaller than I needed to. I walked over to the dumpster by my building and dropped every last piece in. The wind could have the sorry. She doesn't get to have my piece. I used to think something like this would kill me. Finding out your wife has a second life. Watching your marriage get dismantled in court. Selling your house with a for sale sign she never saw coming. It sounds like the kind of thing that breaks a man for good. It didn't. It hurt like hell. It took time. It took lawyers and long nights and more silence than I ever thought I could sit in. But it didn't kill me. What it did was strip everything down to the truth. I learned that love without trust is just a word. Pretty but empty. Nothing you can stand on when the ground shakes. I learned that when someone shows you who they really are, you believe them the first time. Not the 10th. Not after the second girl's trip. Not when the hotel photos show up. I learned I'm not a backup plan. I'm not a consolation prize. I'm not a man you keep around to pay the bills while you chase excitement with someone else. And maybe the biggest thing? Sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you is what kicks open the door to the life you actually deserved all along. I still think about that day she pulled into the driveway and saw the for sale sign. She thought it was the end of her marriage. Truth is, it was the beginning of my life. To her, that sign meant losing a house. Losing a man who paid the bills. Losing the safety net she thought would always be there no matter what she did. To me, it meant something else. It meant I wasn't going to live in a home built on lies. It meant I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life wondering where my wife really was. It meant I wasn't going to die slowly in a situation that only looked good from the outside. That cheap piece of plastic in the front yard was the first honest thing in our story. If you've been cheated on, lied to, made to feel crazy for noticing the cracks, hear me on this. You are not a victim forever. You're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to start over. Have you ever faced a moment like this, where you had to choose yourself even when it meant breaking everything? Tell me what you think. I really want to know in the comments below. And if you want more real stories like this, stick around.